So how come the United States was allowed to separate from Britain? Who gave those British subjects the right to overthrow their king? The laws of nature and of nature's God entitled our American nation to assume independence by way of revolution by the powers of the earth. This is from the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. So they're addressing the opinions of mankind, and they're basing its appeal on the basis of the laws of nature and of nature's God. On the laws of nature and of nature's God. That justifies not only independence, but independence by revolution. Independence by way of revolution. So Thomas Jefferson, he articulated how he believed that it was self-evident that all men are created equal. That human beings had civil rights, specifically life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in the state of nature. We have a right to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness in the state of nature. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, these are categorical imperatives, mandatory essential rights of men, which originate from the state of nature. These are natural rights, natural laws. Now, you're going to have Hobbes. Thomas Hobbes went ahead and wrote 19 laws of nature. He wrote 19 laws of nature. So he wrote this in 1651. 1651, almost 400 years ago. So for Thomas Hobbes, he's the one that says that the state of nature is everybody's against everybody. It's a war of everybody against everybody. Every man against every man. And the life of man is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. So the Leviathan is where this comes from. Thomas Hobbes' 19 Laws of Nature. The Leviathan's written in 1651, immediately after the English Civil War. Hobbes just lived in the state of nature where it was every man versus every man, of all versus all. The English Civil War lasted for 9 years, and it had to do with who ran England. Was it the king or Parliament? Which is actually such an intelligent debate. The Parliamentarians are going to win. So the good guys won. 200,000 Englishmen are going to get killed in the 9-year English Civil War, which lasted from 1642 to 1651. It was the Parliamentarian Roundheads versus the Royalist Coneheads. In Rule 10, Hobbes, in his 19 Laws of Nature, Rule 10, Hobbes lists some of our human needs. So we have a right to life. So that means we have a right to defend ourselves. We have a right to food and water and clothing for warmth and shelter and security. Those are Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. Something that connects us all too. But in Rule 10, Hobbes had that we have the right to govern ourselves, our own bodies. We have a right to air, we have a right to water, we have a right to motion, and we have a right to transportation. We also have a right to all things else without which a man cannot live or not live well. So the right to govern our own bodies, the right to air, right to water, right to motion, or right to transportation. These are natural rights. These are rights that come from nature. Now, natural rights isn't so much it comes from nature, but in the state of nature, since everybody's fighting against everybody, you want a Leviathan, a strong government, in order to provide for your protection and safety and security, also protecting, all your natural rights, protect your self-defense rights, protect your right to food, water, clothing, shelter, right to govern our own bodies, a right to air, right to water, right to motion, a right to air. Could you imagine somebody saying, nuh-uh, I have the right to breathe? No, you don't. You disagreeable son of a bitch. Thomas Hobbes' 19 Laws of Nature. So here's Thomas Hobbes. So we're able to, natural law are laws that the rational man is animal, right? We come from nature, but we're also rational. We have the ability to use logic and understand the world through, observation, experimentation, science. We could figure out science and logic is all we got. Science and logic is all we got. But that's, a lot. Logic is putting things together logically, like building blocks. How do you build a house? Brick by brick. And that's how we were able to build skyscrapers. So Thomas Hobbes' 19 Laws of Nature. This is everything he was able to figure out. Rational man can deduce from nature these 19 laws. Thy will endeavor peace for as long as possible, then war. That's the number one rule. Endeavor peace for as long as possible. And then war. You have a right to defend yourself. And especially since you've chosen to endeavor peace for as long as possible. Be willing to agree to a social contract for defense and political freedoms and rights. Rights are equal, whatever floats your boat, but doesn't sink mine. Agree to a social contract. That's number 2. Justice. Centered around contracts, fulfill thy contractual obligations, honor thy word. Be graceful and accept gratitude, accept kindness as it is. Be sociable, forgive, pardon. Give out rational punishment, justice, not revenge, with an eye toward the future. The 8th, against contumely, don't hate or have contempt for others, or at least don't show it. Keep thy hate and contempt to thyself. All men are created equal. Political rights are universal. Don't be arrogant, for peace talks use fair procedural rules. Whatever floats your boat but doesn't sink mine. Equity, judges are to be impartial, even-handed judgment. Enjoy the commons collectively. Divide things up that cannot be commonly enjoyed. Lottery chooses who gets to own not common property. The first possessor owns it, or the firstborn. Peacemaker, envoys have free passage. Submit thee to a judge whenever there's a controversy, argument, or fight. A man cannot judge his own case. A judge can't have any conflicts of interest. And judges must judge each man equally and use witnesses when evidence is scant. So out of 19 total laws of nature, here's Thomas Hobbes' fundamental law of nature. The fundamental law of nature, and consequently it's a precept or general rule. We're able to figure that man can figure all that out. We can figure out, right, all men are created equal. We have political civil liberties. We should be sociable and graceful and accept gratitude and forgive others and pardon. Go for justice, not revenge. Give whatever rights you have to others. Whatever we enjoy the commons collectively. Whatever can't be divided, we divide. A man can't judge his own case. A judge should judge impartially. Peace envoys have free passage. For peace talks, use fair procedural rules. 1651, we figured all that out. In 1601, we had all that figured out. So there's 19 laws of nature, and the first law is you have a right to defend yourself. So the fundamental law of nature, this is what Thomas Hobbes calls rule number one. Rule number one. And it's a precept, a general rule of reason, that every man ought to endeavor peace as far as he has hope of obtaining it. And when he cannot obtain it, then he may seek and use all helps and advantages of war. The first branch of which rule containeth the first and fundamental law of nature, which is to seek peace and follow it. The second, the sum of the right of nature, which is by all means we can to defend ourselves. By all means we can to defend ourselves. So the right to defend ourselves comes from the state of nature, according to Thomas Hobbes. We pursue peace by any means necessary, and when that's impossible, then we seek war by any means necessary. So to seek peace and follow it, and by all means we can to defend ourselves. That's law number one. That's the fundamental law of nature. And then law number two. And then law number three. Let's explain each one. So law number two, be willing to agree to a social contract. A man be willing, when others are so too, as far forth as for peace and defense of himself, he shall think it necessary to lay down this right to all things, and be contented with so much liberty against other men as he would allow other men against himself. Justice, centered around contracts. Men perform their covenants made. You made a deal, stick to it. Be graceful. Accept gratitude. Accept kindness as it is. A man which receiveth benefit from another of mere grace, endeavor that he which giveth have no reasonable cause to repent him of his goodwill. That motherfucker being nice to us? Who's that motherfucker think he is? Be sociable. Every man strive to accommodate himself to the rest, for the stubbornness of his passions cannot be corrected, is to be left or cast out of society as cumbersome thereunto. For seeing every man not only by right, but also by necessity of nature is supposed to endeavor all he can to obtain that which is necessary for his conservation. The observers of this law may be called sociable, the contrary stubborn, and sociable froward, intractable. The sixth law of nature, to forgive or pardon upon caution of the future time. A man ought to pardon offenses past to them that repent and desire it. The sixth, facility to pardon, that upon caution of the future time, a man ought to pardon the offenses past to them that repent and desire it. For pardon is nothing but granting a peace, which though granted to them that persevere in their hostility, be not peace but fear, yet not granted to them that give caution of the future time, is sign of an aversion to peace, and therefore contrary to the law of nature. Rational punishment, justice, not revenge, with an eye toward the future. The seventh, that in revenges men respect only the future good. In revenges men look not at the greatness of the evil past, but the greatness of the good to follow, whereby we are forbidden to inflict punishment with any other design than for correction of the offender or direction of others. For this law is consequent to the next before it, that commandeth pardon upon security of the future time. Besides, revenge without respect to the example and profit to come is a triumph or glorying in the hurt of another, tending to no end, for the end is always somewhat to come, and glorying to no end is vainglory, and contrary to reason, and to hurt without reason tended to the introduction of war, which is against the law of nature, and is commonly styled by the city of cruelty, by the name of cruelty. Eighth, against contumely, don't hate or have contempt for others, or at least don't show it. Keep thy hate and contempt to thyself. No man by deed, word, countenance, or gesture declare hatred or contempt of another, because all signs of hatred or contempt provoke to fight, in so much as most men choose rather to hazard their life than not to be revenged. We may, in the eighth place, for a law of nature, set down this precept, that no man by deed or word or countenance or gesture declare hatred or contempt of another, the breach of which law is commonly called contumely. All men are created equal. Political rights are universal. Number 9. Every man acknowledge another for his equal by nature. The 9th, against pride. The question of who is the better man has no place in the condition of mere nature, where, as has been shown before, all men are equal. The inequality that now has been introduced by the law civil. I know that Aristotle, in the first book of his Politics, for a foundation of his doctrine, maketh men by nature some more worthy to command, meaning the wiser sort, such as he thought himself to be for his philosophy, others to serve, meaning those that had strong bodies but were not philosophers, as if master and servant were not introduced by consent of men, but by difference of wit, which is not only against reason, but also against experience, for there are very few so foolish that had not rather governed themselves than been governed by others. Nor when the wise in their own conceit contend by force with them who distrust their own wisdom, do they always or often or almost at any time get the victory. If nature therefore have made men equal, that equality is to be acknowledged. For if nature have made men equal, the equalities is to be acknowledged. Or if nature have made men unequal, yet because men that think themselves equal will not enter into conditions of peace, but upon equal terms, such equality must be admitted. And therefore, for the 9th law of nature, I put this, that every man acknowledge other for his equal by nature. The breach of this precept is pride. All men are created equal. Don't be arrogant. For peace talks, use fair procedure rules. At the entrance into the conditions of peace, no man required to reserve to himself any right which he is not content should be reserved to every one of the rest. All men are created equal, motherfucker. Whatever rights you claim for yourself, others get to claim too. When it is necessary for man's life to retain some as right to govern their own bodies, enjoy air, water, motion, ways to go from place to place, and all things else, without which a man cannot live or not live well. Number 11, equity. Is this all right? How far are we in?